I had a blooper recording this very video that comes up right at the end after my usual signing out. Hello, Dr. Joe here of the AskDrJoe.org and the 2020from.com. So folks, what have I got here in my hand? Well, as you can tell, this is a packet of pasta. Now, pasta is a carbohydrate-rich food that is loved by millions and millions of people. Now, amongst these millions of people who love pasta, there is a huge chunk of them who are concerned about the effect of pasta on their blood sugar levels. They're worried about pasta's glycemic index, and because of that, they tend to avoid eating pasta. Now, are their fears misplaced? Of course not. But what's the main reason for this? Well, it's because these folks, you guys have been eating pasta all wrong, okay? You've been eating pasta the wrong way. And what I decided to do in this very video is provide you guys with 6 coherent tips that will allay your fears regarding the effect of pasta on your blood sugar levels. So 6 tips. Now, if you're diabetic, you should pay special attention to these 6 tips that I'm going to be sharing with you because they will serve you well. So, 6 tips that will make you eat pasta safely. How about we get started? Okay, so before we get started, I just want to say 2 things. The first thing is a quick plug. This is my book on managing high blood pressure with lifestyle approach. Links to get a book right below this very video. The second thing I want to say is that you need to pay special attention to tip number 3 and number 6 in this very presentation. So let's dive straight in. What is tip number 1? Well, tip number 1 has to do with the type of pasta that you buy in the shops, okay? The type of pasta that you buy in the shops. So this is the pasta you saw earlier on in the presentation. This pasta is refined pasta. Refinement means that you have very little fiber left in here. And very little fiber means the glucose from this very pasta is going to be absorbed a lot more rapidly compared to the sister variety. So instead of buying this refined pasta, I will encourage you to go for the sister pasta, the sister variety, which is this one right here. This is whole grain pasta. Whole grain pasta means that a lot of the fiber is still left intact, and the presence of the fiber means that the glucose absorption from this very pasta, this whole grain pasta, is going to be a lot slower compared to the glucose absorption from this refined pasta. So instead of this refined pasta, please go for the whole grain pasta. It makes a whole lot of difference to how quickly the glucose is absorbed. So tip number 1 has to do with the type of pasta that you buy from the shops. Let's move on to tip number 2. And tip number 2 has to do with how you cook your pasta. So how do you cook your pasta? Well, you should cook your pasta the way the Italians cook theirs. And how do the Italians cook their pasta? Well, they cook it al dente. Al dente simply means to the tooth. What does that mean in plain English? Well, al dente means that you should cook your pasta firm. It should be firm to bite. So you should cook it to a consistency that is firm, but it's not hard or chalky. At the same time, it is not too soft. So you should be somewhere in the middle. That's where you want to be. That is the consistency that works. And indeed, why is this important? Well, it is important because if you cook it al dente, it means that your body is going to find it very difficult to break all of the pasta down into the glucose subunits, which means less glucose is absorbed, which also means lower blood glucose levels for you. Okay, so tip number 2 is to cook your pasta al dente. Let's move on to tip number 3. Well, tip number 3 is something to do with oils. I want you to not use any seed oils when you prepare your pasta. Either adding seed oils directly to the pasta or into the sauce. Please do not do that. Now, this advice has always been given by gurus to, have oil with your carbohydrates because that's going to slow down the blood sugar absorption. Well, it is wrong advice. I have given that advice myself in the past. Well, that advice is wrong. Please do not add any oil to your pasta because when you do that, the fat is going to get absorbed and your body is going to metabolize the fats and ignoring the carbohydrates, the glucose from the pasta. And that means a lot of the glucose is just going to be left completely abandoned. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing is that when the fat gets absorbed into the blood circulation, the presence of the fat in the blood circulation interferes with the glucose uptake by the cells, which means a lot of the glucose is going to be abandoned in the blood circulations, which translates to higher blood sugar levels. So please do not use any seed oils along with your pasta, either directly on the pasta or in the sauce. No oils, please. Okay, very important, especially if you're diabetic. This is the message that I've been banging on this whole year. For people to stop using oils as much as possible, reduce your oil consumption, because you are interfering with glucose metabolism, and that's what leads to diabetes. So that's tip number 3, no oils, no seed oils. Let's move on to tip number 4. And tip number 4 has to do with using something acidic when you're consuming your pasta. So tomato sauce is a very good idea because tomato is somewhat acidic. So using a tomato sauce is a good idea, but you can also have some acidic fluids along with your pasta. So something like lemon juice is also a good idea, and also apple cider vinegar or any other vinegar for that matter, because the acid present in any of those foods will interfere with the amylase enzymes, and that means the amylase is going to break down very little of the starch in the pasta. And that translates to very few glucose molecules being made available for absorption, and that translates ultimately to lower blood sugar levels. So have something acidic with your pasta. That is tip number 4. Let's move on to tip number 5. Tip number 5 is giving your pasta a bit of company. Okay, give your pasta a bit of company, and here is a very nice company. This is broccoli. This is green beans. And of course, this is kale vegetable. So having any of these or a combination of these or any other vegetable for that matter with your pasta is a very good idea. Why is this important? Well, all of these have plenty of fiber. So more fiber along with the fiber from the whole grain pasta means that you have plenty of fiber, which means slower glucose absorption, and that translates to lower blood sugar levels. Okay, so have some vegetable along with your pasta. And the other point I want to make is that, in actual fact, when you constitute your plate, have more of the veggies and less of the pasta in the plate. When you do that, you'll be helping yourself a great deal, and that will translate to really very low blood sugar absorption as well. So that's tip number 5. Let's move on to tip number 6. Tip number 6 has to do with temperature. So what I suggest is that when you cook your pasta, you should allow it to cool down, or better still, refrigerate it overnight, and then when you bring it out the next morning, you can eat your pasta either cold, but if you don't want it cold, you can reheat it and you'll still be fine. When you refrigerate your pasta overnight, a lot of the starch in the pasta, the molecular structure will be rearranged such that you will now end up with a lot more resistant starch, and resistant starch is a lot more difficult for your body to break down, and that will be a prebiotic for your gut microbiome. So it's a win-win situation. You're going to have less glucose being absorbed, and you're going to feed your gut microbiome as well. So refrigerate your pasta overnight, or allow it to cool down at the very least, and you'll have more resistant starch available, which will translate to lower blood sugar levels for you. So those are your 6 tips. They are wonderful tips that will enable you to consume your pasta a lot more safely. You don't have to worry about any blood sugar concerns going forward. So hopefully you'll adopt them, and when you do, you will win all the way. So hopefully you got some value from this very video. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, please like the video, and also please share this video with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. If you got any questions, any comments regarding the content of this video presentation, go ahead and leave your comments or questions down below. I think that's about it for this video. Until next time, well, this is Dr. Joe signing out. So that's tip number 3, no oils, no seed oils. Let's move on to seed.